business is mostly repeat and referral clients. She plays ultimate frisbee, chases her 4-year-old, hikes, writes an e-newsletter about working and living with ADHD called Successful Yet Scattered. Elly. We have John Blacksmith. John is a 25-year veteran with Lincoln Company. Got some Lincoln Company peeps here. One shop, 97 agent boutique in Seattle. He is consistent top producer and known as Yoda in the office. He's always, we've been drawn to him for his intellect, his kindness, and consistency, and what Diane admires most about him is work-life balance he's been able to master for a long time. He is super calm, never stressed, regardless of the market. That's John. And then we have Miss Diane Terry. Seattle realtor for over 3 decades. Her business is 99% repeat or referral based, drawing from her business school experience and 12 years in corporate America. She loves business plans and many systems baked into her business for a consistent level of service. She believes consistency breeds trust. She's formalized her coaching business earlier this year. You can find it at DianeTerryCoach.com. She loves mentoring, teaching, coaching, and encouraging others. Take it away. Yes.
See how I negotiated extra time by having him do the intro? So the topic was staying up when sales are down, and the 3 of us got together to discuss what we were going to share with you. And I think the theme that kept coming up was resilience. You know, how do we stay resilient when the things that we are not in control of are shifting around? So I'm going to share with you, they were going to share with us their secret sauce. They're both very respected agents in the Seattle area, both for different reasons, but I think that we're lucky to have their input. So Elly, you want to start us off?
Sure. All right. Well, let's get right into it. I think a lot of us wanted to turtle last year, right? Like around Q3, Q4. I don't know about you. I had 4 listings at least that were struggling really, really badly. And when that was happening, I realized my embarrassment, my pain, all of that was being felt 10 times more by my client, right? Because they were the one whose investment wasn't selling. They needed to move on. They needed to get out of this. So what I did in that moment, instead of staying in my little shell, was I got closer to all of my clients. I recognized that, you know, we're like people who are sistering the joint, right? We're coming up to them in their most vulnerable, weakest time, and we're supporting them through that. So that was one thing. The other thing was creating community for myself, because I was struggling. My mindset was in the toilet when I came to Annapolis, right? And then I left Annapolis and I was like, oh, everybody there, everybody's doing great. I mean, maybe they're also struggling, but the mindset piece was so wonderful and beautiful, and that, really focusing, like Dave was talking about, on those higher level items. So creating community within the other brokers, and I would really encourage you all to reach out to your other brokers, especially the brokers who are here nationally. That got me through the last 6 months. Obviously, consistency is a huge theme and very, very important, right? I think a lot of us had trouble when all the burners were running extremely hot. But if you can maintain those systems, and you don't have to maintain the systems the same way everybody else does. I have ADHD. I do great with sprints. Give me a week, I'll get 120 handwritten notes out, right? The way that you do it still needs to check the box, but there are so many ways to check that box. I also really like to reframe how I think about my year. Because when I'm at a high point in my cycle, somebody else is at a low point in their cycle, right? And so if we think of it more like farming, where we have a planting phase, a growing phase, a harvest phase, and a rest phase with intention, those are some things that can help us not just feel like, oh my God, I don't have anything going on. What am I gonna do, right? So those were some of the biggest things for me in the past year. And then thinking about the headlines. So I don't know if you were in our area, the sky was falling. Tech workers were, apparently everybody was gonna be out of work in a week, right? But, you know, that created some space for my other people who finally had a chance to get under contract on something and didn't maybe have all that technical. So those were the 4 things for me that really helped.
So Elly, one of the things I really love that you took on, in addition to real estate, is your new e-newsletter. And in it, I read about Pinch. Can you share with us about Pinch?
Right. So if you guys need to quickly hack your motivation, if you're really, really struggling, feel free to write this down. Pinch. P stands for play. Make it a game if you can. If you need some help, let me know. I, make it interesting. So maybe you just get a new notebook. Maybe you just need something that will engage you in the activity a little bit easier. N stands for novel, so maybe do it in a place that's different. Like, get out of your brokerage or get out of your house, go do it at a coffee shop. Find a friend to go do it with. C stands for challenge or competition. And obviously, you know, this is not a cutthroat competition. This is a playful competition between maybe you and a friend, or maybe within your brokerage. And if you don't know how that looks, feel free to ask me. My brokerage does a competition every single year. It's very collaborative. H is hurry up, and that's make it a deadline. Like if you're struggling and you're not doing your taxes, make it a deadline. Get it on, you know, in the next 24 hours. I actually did it for here. I had to get all of the rest of my like little piddly tax random things that hadn't been done yet. I had to get that done right before I got here, because otherwise I couldn't come, was the pretend thing in my head.
The way that we motivate ourselves. So, John, when we were prepping for this, you shared with me your secret sauce and what the founder of Lake & Company, which is a very highly regarded boutique firm in Seattle, taught you in the very beginning.
Woo!
Can you share that with us?
Happy to. Not too loud.
No.
All right. Founder's name is Mike Scan. Shout out to him in case he's watching the video sometime. 1982. Here's his saying. Be careful to cultivate and to protect your most important asset in this business. The big E. What's the big E? Enthusiasm. I don't know about y'all, but some days, sometimes in this business, it can suck that right out of you, despite all your best efforts and following various plans and methods. So I want to talk a little bit about what I call how to be calm and joyful in this ever-changing business. I'm just hearing, whether it be here or through other coaches, we hear lots of tactics that we can use, plans that we can execute. Sometimes it might feel like we're trying to drink from a fire hose. So for me, I want to create like a safe space where I get to a point that I can say to myself, if I do these things, my success in this business is inevitable. It's inevitable over time. So I'm kind of a simple thinking guy, so I have to have buckets for things. So I have 2 main buckets in the real estate business. Bear with me, I usually make sense in the end. No promises, but no. Bucket number 1, getting the business. Obviously, most of us are not handed leads. Most of us, we have to go out and get it. We eat what we kill, in the words of my Uncle Vic. Sorry to any vegetarians in the audience. We have to stay in front of people we already know, our network that refers us and sends us, really, sounds like for most of us, most of our business. And we also have to do things to get in front of people that don't know us yet. And there's all kinds of tactics for that. What are we going to do to get our name out there and promote ourselves? And my feeling always is, nothing amazing here to hear, but there's many different ways to do it, things that work for people. And my strategy is, I just want to determine what those things are for me, and that's my list.
So I tend to remember things by little 3x5 note cards. If you can envision my home office, I've got a whole wall full of them. It's not pretty sight. Don't envision it. Lots of 3x5 note cards on a wall. Here's the first one. I look at it every day. Do or do not. There is no try. Oh, good. You know where that came from. In case you don't, Yoda, 1977, first novel. Okay. For me, I have that's the way I use that is to say, I'm going to have a mental category of do. Those are the things that I'm going to do. Those are the things that if I do those things consistently and skillfully and leading with my heart into it and getting help when I need to, if I do that, once again, my success is inevitable. The phone's going to ring, or most likely a text message now. Business is going to come my way. But the other side of that coin of do is do not. So I'm going to say do not a couple times, but when you say it, just small caveat. It means do not, at least for right now. So when I hear lots of other ideas, and man, have I already heard some today, my do not bucket has grown today already so far, and it's constantly growing. I don't have to fight off ideas and feel threatened by them or jealous or worried about people doing things that I'm not doing. They'll just go in the do not, at least for right now, bucket. And then I can just do the things in my do bucket, plug away at them day after day, week after week, month after month. And then every December, business kind of slows down for me. Everyone has a different rhythm, that's me. Business is kind of slower in December. I pick some time to go back and revisit all that. Are there some things in the do bucket that need to go away? Not as effective as they once were? I'm old enough that I used to mail out physical paper calendars to people. That's left the do bucket, although I know it still works for some. Many, many things have moved out of the do not into the do category. But at the end of the day, it's still a finite list. I don't have to feel like I have to do everything all the time or I'm not going to make it. Okay. Another little side bucket there is, once I've got the business, I got to deliver the results. I got to do the thing that my client has hired me to do for them. And that's another area where we're constantly getting new tactics and strategies, things coming our way, and we can evaluate what those can be. For that, it's more about kind of slightly different approach there. Slight diversion here. Little story. I got a client of mine who teaches pilots. He's a pilot himself. But his job is he sits on the outside of a simulator at Renton Boeing plant, and pilots from all over the world fly to there. They get imprisoned in that little simulator, and they have to fly an airplane in a simulator. His job is to make it harder and harder for him. Until, this might surprise you, the goal eventually is to get them to fail. I think we know what failure means if you're flying an airplane. They crash it. And I asked him, how do you do that? Like, both engines fail and a lightning strike and a hand of God smites the airplane down? No. It's usually one mechanical thing of a medium scale. And then, picture a cockpit. There's all these dials and knobs and things and computers there. All he's doing is changing some of those things. So, oh, this thing used to be green, now it's flashing yellow. This thing used to read this, now it's reading something else. But the key point is, of all those things that are happening, none of them are what he calls mission critical. In other words, all of them can be ignored. And focus on the thing at hand, which is maybe we have a mechanical problem that we have to address. And find a workaround around that. Layer enough of those on, eventually, literally they'll just fail. Okay. They'll crash that plane in the simulator, and even though they know they're in the simulator, there's this moment of absolute silence for a while. The full thing, the sweats, the just absolute terror on their minds. And he waits a beat, and then he says to them, into the silence, through the microphone, because he's outside, next time, don't forget to fly the airplane. And this just started out as a little conversation with you, and I bet it's one of the most powerful things, so it's on a postcard behind my wall. Don't forget to fly the airplane. There's always side issues that are not mission critical. And the key for me on that is, again, nothing too earth-shattering, checklists, checklists, and checklists. If they're good enough for airplane pilots and they're good enough for surgeons whose jobs really matter, when we have a bad day, some kind of things can happen. When they have a bad day, a whole other realm of things can happen. If it's good enough for them, it's good enough for us.
checklist analogy because those of us that have businesses that are deeply repeat and referral, that experience has to be consistent. You can't have them be at a party and talk about their experience and have it be vastly different from somebody else's, right? And so the checklist for me, I mean, I have one for buyers and one for sellers on a clipboard, so when I'm on a call and I go, oh, this is gonna be a seller call, I grab the seller checklist, and everything is consistent. The systems are consistent throughout, and I think that that's really important. And the other thing that John touched on that's really important is when you go to a seminar like this, your mind is just like blown with all the things that you're not doing, but that you could be doing. But the interesting thing is you have to stick with what you're doing long enough for it to be effective. When I'm coaching newer agents in the business, they go, oh, I did postcards for 2 months and it didn't work. I'm like, what the hell? 2 months? Like, I've been doing it for 30 years. Like, you know, you've got to be consistent. It's consistency breeds trust. So there's nothing worse than starting a postcard program and then stopping, and then starting again, and then stopping. Like, commit. You have to commit. John, any other 3x5s that you want to share with us?
I thought you'd never ask. I got one more. I've got a lot more, but I won't burden you with all of them. Here's the one. Pay attention to what is happening, not to what you think should be happening. I'm sure you're all mentally nominating me for the Captain Obvious Award of 2023, but I'm just going to throw it out there. One of those things that sounds easy and maybe sometimes harder in practice than it appears. And I think we've all had those moments where, I don't know, use an example, that broker on the other side of the transaction did whatever. Didn't do what they said they were going to do, did something out of left field that makes it harder for everyone, flat out lied to you. Anyone ever had that happen? I didn't like it. And I think we all got to allow ourselves a moment of anger or some sort of response to that, because we all are humans. But then with the goal being to try to move beyond it, and I found that the best way to move beyond it is to try to describe what's happening to somebody who can understand and know. And for that, that's almost exclusively other real estate brokers. Like, we're kind of a weird little club, aren't we? Like, nobody else can really get it. I mean, I love my wife and we talk about many things, but not that. But trying to describe the specifics of the situation to somebody else, just that alone just calms me down. And it helps me see, okay, this is what's happening, fine. I've heard some different words here, so I can say it. Shit happens. It just happened. But then move on to the next thing real fast. What do I want to have happen next? That's the focus. Where do I want to go from here?
Yeah, I think that's right. Trevor Moad, that he was the coach for Russell Wilson. I'm not a sporting guy, so sorry, but he was a sports coach, and he talked about the importance of that happened, fine, let it go, move on. And I think that we really need to become very expert at that. Is stuff happens in our day, every day, and it affects the client, but you need to be focused on getting the contract to close. So don't spend 3 days bitching about the other agent. It's done. What's going to solve the problem? What's going to move the ball forward? Let's talk about what are the things that Elly, you do consistently throughout the years to make your people trust you.
So for me, obviously, I think everybody has a marketing calendar here probably, or if you don't, please do. I do 120 porch drops each quarter. So I am across the yard from my folks. I'm face to face with my folks regularly throughout the year. I don't know how many of you are getting all of those lender phone calls right now that are like, hey, let's work together. How's the business? They don't want to, just like we don't want to work with those lenders, they don't want to work with us if they've barely seen our face in the last few years, right? So that is a big thing in my marketing. I also like to have like those surprise and delight moments that were talked about earlier, but as touch points within the transaction. So appraisal happens, I show up afterwards with a box of boxes and say, hey, it's time to actually start packing. Have you told your landlord you're leaving? So creating those moments where I can be in front of them again, it's a little celebration. It's a mini celebration at each of those little hurdles. I also do post-closing follow-ups, and obviously that includes the request for a review, stuff like that. But things like moisture alarms, things like that, that show that I care about their property now. I'm not just trying to get the business, right? And truly, most of my stuff is not saying anything about send me a referral, send me a referral. I do have a referral tree, thank you, so I'm training them. I know the genealogy of all of my people, and I keep it in an Excel spreadsheet, like Emily does. And that has been great, because what I do is I go down the list, not just to the person that referred me just that time, it's all the way down to the first person who ever referred me. And I say, hey, you don't know this, but what you just did helped this person way over here get a beautiful house. And now they are over the moon. Can I tell you a little bit about it? And for the most part, yeah, they want to hear that. And they're so excited and they're so touched. And I don't even have to give them a gift necessarily, but just that moment of acknowledging that they were the hero in the story, right? Andrea Pettit from Boise turned me on to Marketing Made Simple. It's a book by Donald Miller. It's also an audiobook for those of you who hate reading, or are in the car all the time. Make your clients the hero of the story.
That's great. Sean, I need you to quickly tell us the marketing things that we do.
How about just one? I got one.
Okay, good.
It's a new one that moved from Do Not to Do this last year.
Okay.
Text messages. I don't mean just sending people text message. Here's my thing. I'm out and about, say I'm in a neighborhood, in the Seattle area, so somewhere in that, I'm in that neighborhood, showing a house to a buyer. I make myself stop at some point and maybe take a picture of a local park or a store or a restaurant that's renowned or something like that. And then later in the day when I'm home, think to myself, who do I have that are my clients that live in that neighborhood? You know, who do I have that I want to be my clients that I've been, communicating with for a while that they aren't quite yet? And I'll just message them that photo.
I think that's so smart. Like, I know that for me, I get up really early. I get up at 5 a.m. every morning, and I go through my email feed, and inevitably I find like 5 to 10 things that pop up in my feed that remind me of a past client. So like this morning, there was an article on a certain plant, and I remember when we walked up to that house 20 years ago, we were like, oh, look at those Japanese anemones. And we had a long conversation about it. And so instead of just spraying my people with the same message, because we all know when we get that kind of marketing piece in our mailbox, it's like, well, whatever. But if I'm able to send a card of an anemone plant and go, here's an article I saw today, it reminded me of you, that's when you get a client for life. So I've worked with some of my clients 8 times now, 8-time repeat clients. And I do that by making each one feel super special, right? We're going to talk a little bit about financial resilience, because I think that anytime there's turbulence in the marketplace and you can't see the horizon, fear sets in. And so what we talked about, what are the things that make us stay calm? And one of them is, what are you doing in your life to give yourself some financial resilience to be able to face these storms? Elly, do you want to share?
So when the 2020 happened, I saw it a little bit on the horizon. We saw it coming, right? And immediately, before HELOCs went away, I opened a HELOC. That calmed my nervous system, right? I was no longer in this fear mode of what am I going to do? The other thing, and Gwen Dobbenmeyer talked about this at the last hustle, was Profit First by Mike McAllowitz, also on audiobook for those people who want to listen to it. And it's just a wonderful way to have a very quick overview of what is operating expense versus savings, or all the different buckets. If you have questions about that, please talk to Gwen. You can talk to me. There are a number of people who use it now.
Right, John, what do you do that's different?
Sure. So I've been at it long enough, and I went through 2008 too. Little confession for you. I had to borrow $10,000 from a colleague of mine at Lake to pay my freaking mortgage. You've all heard maybe our grandparents talk about the Great Depression and how it changed them forever. That made an impact on me. So for me, I've got 2 years of liquid cash in the bank. That's what I need. And I recognize I could probably leverage that money. There's all kinds of ways that we realtors know that we can make money with some investments, but that's what I need to just feel like I'm never going to have to do that again. The other thing for me, it depends on the scale you work at. For me, I'm pretty averse to having a lot of fixed payroll. I have one, so I'm my marketing coordinator. But other than that, basically when I'm busier, I hire colleagues who aren't as busy to help me out. And I've got some people that I trust and have great relationships with for that. And then when I'm not busy, I don't need to hire them.
So we're very similar. I obviously went through 2008, and true confessions, I had to take out a business bank loan for $60,000 to keep my business afloat, and I did it without telling my partner or my husband. And that was a huge violation of trust that I was going to commit. And so after I made it through that, and I was able to pay it all back within 2 years, but still, I swore to myself that I would never put myself in that situation again. So I always have 2 years liquid cash or near liquid cash ready to go. I have a HELOC. I don't have a large payroll. What else? That's what I need to have financial resilience. And everybody's different. Like some people have beautiful, huge businesses and that can't be, but for me, that's what works. Okay, so we are out of time, which is surprising because we had a whole other page worth of questions that we timed like 3 times, but